Everyone, thank you for joining us today. We will take a few moments to allow students and guests to filter in and set up their audio settings. For those of you who have trouble locating your audio settings, it should be located at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. All right, thank you again for joining us for another Discover Your UC webinar. My name is Mariah Tresvant and I am the Transfer Admissions Advisor here at UC Merced. Today we will be going over the UC Transfer Admissions Guarantee Program, and I am joined today by my colleagues from the other 5 UC TAG campuses who will be assisting not only with the presentation, but in the background as well to answer any questions that you may have. This webinar will be recorded and available on our UC Transfer Initiatives webpage that will also be shared with you all in the chat. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to utilize the Q&A function, and we will be sure to answer them throughout the presentation and towards the end. Now I will go ahead and pass the mic over to my colleague, Melissa, to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Melissa Chavez. I am the Assistant Director for Transfer Services at UC Santa Barbara's campus. I get the pleasure of starting this presentation for you all. We promise it's very informative, and like Mariah said, please use the Q&A function to ask any questions. The information will be broad. We'll cover all the different UC tag requirements, but if you do have any very campus-specific tag questions, type them into the chat box. I'm sorry, not the chat box, the Q&A, and make sure that you identify the campus that you want to answer that question for you. Alrighty. Before I commence, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this place and all land upon which the University, UC Santa Barbara, is located, and pay my respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, and the culture of this area, which has become a place of learning for people from all over the world. The Chumash are a Native American people who historically inhabited the central and southern coastal regions of California in portions of what is now San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Los Angeles County. If you would like to learn about the original inhabitants of the land that you are on, please visit native-land.ca. All righty. So we're going to go over a lot of information today, and we want to make sure that you have all the information that you need in order to successfly prepare and apply for a transfer admission guarantee to one of the 6 campuses that offers this program. So we're going to do a little overview for you. We're going to make sure that you're aware of a couple of terminology, some common terms that we're going to be using a lot throughout this presentation to make sure that you truly know what we're talking about. We're going to talk about the transfer admission requirements. We'll go into the UC TAP basics because it is very important to understand the UC TAP tool to make sure that you fill it out as completely and accurately as possible, because the UC TAP tool is where you will be applying for your transfer admission guarantee. So we'll go into all those details, talk about tag details, dates, deadlines, and then we will open it up for Q&A. We promise we have plenty of time today to cover any questions that you may have. So I love to talk about transfer basics because it's really important for all students to truly understand the foundation of the transfer admission process, because the transfer admission guarantee is really building upon the foundation. So let's go ahead and get started in looking at some common terms that we're going to be seeing throughout this presentation. First and foremost, I've already said it like 12 times today, UC TAP, the UC Transfer Admission Planner, which is an online tool that transfer students can utilize, most especially if they're a student at a California community college, that helps them track and plan their transfer to the UC system. It works in connection with assist.org. And it is a really, really helpful tool. And again, ultimately is where you submit your UC tag, which is the UC Transfer Admission Guarantee. TAP and TAG, they're very common acronyms. There are different programs, probably at your community college or neighboring schools. So just be aware, for the purpose of this presentation, UC TAP is the UC Transfer Admission Planner. UC TAG is the Transfer Admission Guarantee. We may be talking about selective capped majors. And what that means is that these majors or these programs at the UC campuses might have very specific coursework and or GPA requirements that are needed to be completed in order to qualify for admission. So we might talk about some selective and capped majors as well. Last, I mentioned Assist already. Assist.org is where we have all of our articulation agreements. An articulation agreement is a formal agreement between two institutions of higher education to determine equivalent courses. So it's very, very helpful if you're interested in transferring to the UC, and all of you are because you're here with us today. And it is especially helpful as you prepare for your major preparation. So a couple of terms we wanted to make sure you all are crystal clear on. Okay, so now let's talk about the admission requirements. Most of the UC campuses are going to be admitting traditional junior level transfers during the fall term. So for the purpose of this presentation, most of the information is going to be geared toward that fall term. But please be aware that there are other opportunities within the system to transfer in as a lower division / sophomore transfer, and even some mid-year transfer options in the spring or winter terms at certain campuses. And we'll highlight which of the campuses may have a tag option beyond the fall term. So for now, we're looking at fall information. So junior level requirements, this is applicable for all UC campuses. We're going to be looking for this basic information. So this is eligibility. And then our campus selection is just going to be eligibility at a higher level. Okay, so again, it's important to understand the requirements to then understand what tag is and selection. So first and foremost, I always like to start talking about eligibility requirements by talking about the 7-course pattern. So 7 courses. When we receive an application, we're going to look at all of your completed, all of your in-progress courses, and all of your planned courses that you have during the year that you're applying. All of these requirements can be completed with college-level coursework or appropriate examinations that you may have had when you were a high school student, such as advanced placement or international baccalaureate exams. Okay, so 7-course pattern. From these 7 courses, we're going to be looking specifically for 2 courses in English composition, known as UCE, at least 1 course in math, known as UCM. It's a math course that's above intermediate algebra, something like pre-calculus, college algebra, or statistics, or any advanced math is also fine. And then 4 courses from at least 2 of the following 3 areas: arts and humanities, where some of these topics are, or subjects can be fine arts, literature, history, philosophy. Those are common academic areas in the arts and humanities. Social and behavioral sciences. Here we're talking about political science, economics, sociology. Those are common areas in that field. And physical and biological sciences, chemistry, biology, physics, all the sciences. So 7 courses, the 7-course pattern: 2 English, 1 math, and then 4 courses from at least 2 of the 3 areas. What else do you need to take? Because 7 courses is not going to give you the number of units that you need to transfer, which is 60 semester UC transferable units or 90 quarter UC transferable units if your school is on the quarter system. I see you, De Anza, Foothill, and Lake Tahoe Community College. So 60 semester, 90 quarter units. So once you've completed the 7-course pattern, you can start taking classes, or you should be taking classes in your major or general education to make sure that you have at least 60 semester units or 90 quarter units by the spring term prior to transfer. All students have until the spring term prior to transfer to meet these eligibility requirements. But when you apply, you will calculate your GPA through the end of that fall term that you are applying. So you don't have to have everything done right when you submit your UC application. You can still have some courses in progress or planned. That is all about eligibility. GPA. All California residents must have at least a 2.4 minimum GPA, 2.8 for non-residents. But ultimately, we at the UC campuses are always going to recommend students to have a higher GPA than the minimum. That's what makes you a more selective applicant in the applicant pool. Now, there's a couple of other things that I want to quickly mention before I move on. We do allow students to take classes for pass, no pass. So that's a common question that we might get. We do allow up to 14 semester units or 21 quarter units of pass credit to be used to reach the number of units that you need for eligibility. The exception here are winter, spring, and summer 2020. Those are now known as COVID terms. A lot of you all may have been enrolled at your community college during this time, and maybe you were given the choice of getting letter grades for your classes. Maybe you were forced to take all your classes for pass, no pass. So to be fair and to honor, the struggle, right? The challenges that we all faced during COVID and are still continuing to face in some way, shape, or form, we temporarily lifted that limit for those 3 terms. So all classes that you earn for pass grades during those terms will count. The thing you want to be careful about is major preparation, because that's the last piece that I always like to talk about is major preparation. Once you've identified the major that you want to major in, it's important for you to prepare as much as possible. And sometimes your preparation is a requirement for admission. Okay, it's very, very important to understand that. If major preparation is a requirement for admission, that means you have to have it done before you apply. Actually, no, by spring term before transfer, not before you apply. If it's recommended, it means we really want you to have it done because of the fact of, being able to progress in your major once you transfer to the UC campus, graduating in a timely manner. All of those things are really important in terms of the academic journey that you'll be on as a transfer student. Alrighty, now, one thing before I pass it on. Some of you might be asking yourself, Melissa, how come you haven't mentioned IGETC? Where is IGETC? I thought IGETC was a requirement. IGETC is not a requirement for admission at the University of California. IGETC, what it is a general education transfer curriculum. If you complete the full IGETC pattern, it means that if you were to transfer to a UC and also a CSU, your general education would be waived at that campus. So by the nature of general education, if you have been following the IGETC pattern, you will have the 7-course pattern completed because it requires at least 2 courses in English, at least 1 course in math, and then it requires a variety of classes in different academic disciplines. So if you've been following IGETC, you probably have the 7-course pattern completed, but IGETC alone is not enough because it doesn't give you enough units. So again, remember, eligibility is the 7-course pattern, having enough units, 60 semester units or 90 quarter units, having a competitive GPA, and preparing for your major as applicable. All righty, so now I'm going to pass it off to back to Mariah.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so now we're going to go over the UC Transfer Admissions Planner, or the UC TAP for short. The UC TAP is a free online tool to help prospective UC transfer students track and plan their college coursework. The TAP is meant for California Community College transfer students and for those who are hoping to apply for the transfer admission guarantee. However, we do encourage non-California Community College students to also utilize the TAP tool because it is also very useful when being advised by UC reps, as we use this tool to help students plan their courses and to advise them. Students can also use this TAP tool to enter courses at any point of their college careers or at any point where they decide to transfer to a UC campus. This tool helps students to track their progress towards meeting minimum UC admissions requirements, such as the UC's English composition and college level math. It also houses the application for the transfer admission guarantee, as Melissa and I have stated previously. It's really important to note that accuracy in the UC TAP tool is vital for success, not only for the tag application and your transfer journey, but utilizing the TAP tool to transfer your coursework over to the UC application when you're ready to submit that. We do recommend that students meet with a college counselor first prior to completing the TAP account, just to make sure that you have all of your college coursework planned, accurate, and that way you're ready to start this and create your account. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So here is a view of the UC tab homepage. And in the view of the homepage, you'll be able to see the status of any tag applications that you may have submitted, as indicated by this beautifully colorful box. You will also be able to access the different components of the UC tab tool. The tab tool is broken down into three main sections. You have the About Me section, My Academic History, and My Transfer Plan. If you would like to also view everything that you've entered into the tab tool in one page, you can do so by navigating to the Record Review section. And just as a note, if you are trying to find the Transfer Admissions Guarantee application, you'll find that within the My Transfer Plan section on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. After creating your account, the first tab that you'll be asked to complete is the My Information tab. In this section, it is really important to complete all the fields listed as required and any sections that you find that are applicable to yourself. Be sure to use the same email address for your UC tab as well as your UC application so that you can easily migrate your coursework from the tab tool to your UC application when you're ready to do so. And this also helps the UC campuses match your tab account to your tag application to your UC application. And as always, make sure you save your work. Next slide, please. So under the My Coursework tab, you will be asked to indicate the term and college that you either attended or are attending and run a search for the name of the course. Be sure to do a thorough search for each class by typing the first three letters of the subject or entering the course number. Sometimes if you type in the full name of the course, they will not generate the courses that you need. So try with the first three letters as a tip. It is also important to note that if you attend multiple colleges, you must report all of them and be sure to list community colleges that are within the same district separately as their own colleges. It's also important to note that you must report all courses taken at every institution, whether or not they are transferable to the UC. Once again, accuracy of information is vital, so we do recommend that you utilize your unofficial transcripts during this time to ensure that you enter all of your coursework in correctly. Next slide, please. All right, so if you are adding coursework from a California community college and it is UC transferable, the courses will auto-generate based on the articulation information that is taken directly from assist.org. Any coursework that is not on assist will have to be entered in manually, and this will include any non-California community college courses and or non-UC transferable courses. Since the UC tab tool is integrated with the UC application, again, you will have the opportunity to transfer your courses from the tab tool to the UC application when you start that process, and it will just help you avoid re-entering all of your courses in twice and really save you a lot of time on your UC application. If you are interested in submitting the Transfer Admissions Guarantee application, a UC tab account is required, and all of the information, again, has to be complete and accurate. And this is important because once you submit your tag application, you're not going to be able to go back in and update any of the courses in your tag application. So you will have to wait until you submit your regular application in order to update those courses. So please, please, please make sure you are being accurate and you are entering all of your courses in very carefully. Next slide, please. So in those cases where you have to enter your courses in manually, when you're not able to find them using the search tool, you can select the Add It Now link at the bottom of the search tool, and you will be able to fill out each of the components that you need on the right-hand side. This includes the subject, the course number, the course title, unit, and grades, all of which can be found on your transcripts. Next slide, please. After entering your coursework, you will have a chance to review your coursework summary, which will not only show you your GPA and unit count, but it will be able to let you know if you're on track to meeting UC's minimum transfer requirements. We recommend that students look at the Assist Certified GPA and Unit Summary, as those courses have already been verified. If a student does happen to have a complex record, for example, out-of-state coursework, international or CSU coursework, a UC admission staff will evaluate the record upon application submission. So you will have to wait until your application is submitted in order to determine these components of your UC TAG tool. So if you have taken any AP or IB examinations, you will have the opportunity to report those scores also within the UC TAG tool. This screen shows the overview of the information that has already been entered, including the exams, their completion date, and the UC area that it fulfills. You will find also the exam unit summary, and you will also be able to see if any of the exams that you've taken and passed satisfy the UC's minimum transfer requirements. Please include all exams that you have taken, regardless of the scores that you have received. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to my colleague, Jessica.
Thank you, Mariah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jessica Berasas. I am the Assistant Director for Transfer at UC Riverside, and I am going to share with you the next step now, which is the transfer admission guarantee. And next slide. So now that you've gone through, you've set up your TAP account, you've entered in all your coursework, as you're going through your academic journey, now you might be at the point where you're ready to apply, and now you want to learn more about TAG and the transfer admission guarantee and what that process is. So to start off, TAG is a guaranteed admission to one UC campus. We do offer the TAG program at 6 of our undergraduate campuses. There are 3 that don't. But the 6 that do participate, we have Davis, we have Merced, Santa Cruz, Santa Barbara, Riverside, and Irvine. So you can tag to one UC campus. Now that doesn't mean that you can't apply to the rest of the 8 undergraduate campuses. You still can apply. But if you want to guarantee your admission, if you want to make sure you get that one spot, tag is a really great option. It's not a requirement for admission, so you still can, like I said, apply to any campus that you're interested in, whether or not they participate in TAG. But there are some additional specific requirements that you have to meet, like GPA and coursework, and some additional details and deadlines that are specific to that TAG campus. Next slide. So TAG eligibility. Like I mentioned, TAG has some additional requirements aside from general admission. So Melissa talked about what those general transfer admission requirements are. TAG goes a little bit beyond that. So in order to be able to submit a TAG, you do have to be a California Community College transfer student who has completed at least half of their units at a California Community College. So if you are an international student with a visa, if you may have started at a 4-year or a Cal State, maybe out of state, but you're now currently a community college student, you're planning to complete your academic years at a California community college before transferring to a UC, you can still be eligible. Now, what happens if for some reason you apply for TAG and it may not be approved? You might be off by just a little bit. It doesn't completely bar you from being considered for admission. So that's the other good part, right? Is that you still may be considered for regular admission, even if your TAG might not be approved. So it's kind of like, it gives you a little bit of extra cushion because those TAG requirements do go beyond the general admission requirements for transfer. So who can't submit a TAG? So senior level transfers are not able to submit a TAG. Now, if you've only attended a California community college, you are not a senior level transfer because California community college units are all considered lower division units. So even if you have 100, 200 units at a CCC, you will not be senior level standing. Senior level standing means that you've gone to a 4-year institution and you've completed upper division coursework. So again, students with upper division level coursework that are senior level are not eligible. If you've already earned a bachelor's degree, graduate degree, or professional degree, you're not eligible for TAG. If you've previously enrolled at a UC campus during a regular term, so if you've gone and taken a summer class, that doesn't count. But if you have been admitted and gone to like a fall, winter, spring term at a UC, and you want to return to that same campus, you're not eligible for tag. And then lastly, any student that's concurrently enrolled in a high school at the time of tag submission is not eligible for tag. Typically, if you are concurrently enrolled at a high school and taking community college classes that you haven't yet graduated, you would be considered a freshman applicant. Next slide. So a couple more things with tag eligibility. So you have to have at least 30 semester units completed at the time of your tag submission date. So for any of you that are planning to apply for fall 2022, you want to have at least 30 units of transferable units completed by September when the tag filing period opens. Then you must also still plan to complete your remaining 60 units by the spring prior to transfer. So essentially by spring 2022, you should plan to have your 60 units completed. Your last regular term of attendance, so spring typically should be at a California community college. There are some stipulations, some campus-specific requirements with your last term of attendance and full-time status, but that's getting a little bit more campus-specific and into the weeds. Keeping it general, you must also complete your specific UCE and UCM requirements. So those transferable English and math requirements that we were talking about earlier as part of the 7-course pattern. Usually those courses do need to be completed by certain semesters, and that can vary by campus. We'll get into that in a couple of slides. And then you must also meet certain GPA requirements, and these can vary by campus, by major, and by college. So depending on which campus you decide to tag to, which major you want to tag to at that campus, your specific tag GPA that you need to meet may vary. And those tag GPAs will vary between as low as a 2.7 all the way up through a 3.6. So we have tag matrix. We're going to go through those specific requirements. So it's really, really important to keep track of those little details. As I mentioned already, students can tag to one UC campus, but you can still apply to as many campuses as you choose. You must also submit a UC application for the campus that you submitted your tag to. So let's say you want to tag UC Riverside, you must also submit a UC application to UC Riverside as well, so that you can be considered for admission and for tag. I always like to talk about the tag application as like a supplemental application that you have along with your UC app. There are some campuses that do conduct a pre-evaluation and will notify students whether they have met tag and have been approved for tag or not. And they will do that notification in in November. And I believe those campuses are Davis and Merced, and please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. We'll do that pre-evaluation. The remaining campuses, we will wait until after you've submitted your UC application. And typically after you've submitted what we call the transfer academic update, which essentially you're reporting your final fall grades, updates to spring in order to review your tag. That way we know all of your courses have been set and you've met specific requirements. Next slide, please. Okay, so that tag matrix that I mentioned. So this is a really, really great resource for you to dive into and really find out all of those specific details for your tag campus. So this is where we lay it all out. So campus by campus, does the campus require a pre-evaluation? You have a little column there that says yes or no. Which terms is tag accepted for? So Melissa mentioned that there are some campuses that might accept tag in a term other than fall. So whether that's winter quarter or spring semester, does that campus accept, when does that campus accept tag applications? Is the major guaranteed? That's also another big part of tag, is that you can also guarantee your major. So if you know you want to go to UC Santa Barbara and you know which major you know you want to get into, you can tag for that major. and you can see if that major will be guaranteed. So if you do apply for the College of Letters and Science in a major that doesn't have a pre-major, you are guaranteed that major if your tag is approved. So really, really great way to kind of take away that anxiety of not knowing as you're applying. Next slide. So getting a little bit more into the details of that tag matrix of those specific requirements, we saw, which ones do a pre-evaluation, which ones will guarantee majors, also which majors are excluded. One thing I didn't mention in that previous slide is there may be some majors that you can't submit a tag to. So being aware of that information is really important as well. It may be that you can't submit a tag for that major, but you can still apply for general admission. So it's really important to keep track of those little nuances. And really important is the English requirement or the UCE requirement and those nuances. So as I mentioned, different campuses may require you to complete that UCE or UCE courses by certain terms. So we have broken down here on the screen a list of the campuses and when they require that UCE to be completed. So we require 2 UCE courses, 2 transferable English. And so for Davis, for example, both of those courses need to be completed by the end of fall 2021 if you're applying for fall 2022 admission. Merced, the first course should be done by the end of this fall semester. The second course should be done by the end of spring 2022. Same thing for Riverside, for Santa Barbara, and for Santa Cruz. Irvine is a little bit different, where you should have your first English course done by the end of this summer and then second course done by the end of spring. So again, you can see the little nuances here in the details. Next slide. And then we transition into math. So what are the nuances with the math requirement? Again, typically, most of the time you will need to be done with your math, your minimum UCM by the end of this fall semester. Some will require that to be completed earlier, like UC Irvine requires your math to be done by the end of this summer, if it hasn't already been completed before then. There are some additional nuances. I can speak to Riverside and say, so if you are part of a selecting major, meaning a major that requires major preparation, that minimum math for your major should be done by fall 2021. So again, those little nuances that are campus by campus are in the tag matrix, but if you're ever uncertain, and you'll hear this a lot throughout, feel free to reach out to that campus. You can reach out to me for Riverside. Our colleagues on this call today will be able to answer those specific questions about when and what those classes are. Next slide. And GPA requirements. So again, I talked about GPA requirements vary by campus, by major. Davis, that GPA varies. So they have a GPA range of a 3.2 to a 3.5, depending on the major that you choose. And that GPA must be met by the end of summer. So as you are completing a summer semester, you should have met that GPA at that time. Irvine has an overall, so for any tag major, students need to have a 3.4 by the end of summer 2021. Merced varies depending on the major that you choose to tag to. That should be done by the end of summer 2021. UC Riverside, we also have our tag GPA vary by major, and that should be met at the time of application. Santa Barbara is a 3.4 overall at the end of fall 2021, and Santa Cruz is a 3.0 overall at the end of fall 2021 as well. Next slide. So with that, I am going to hand it over to my colleague Lisa, who's going to talk a little bit more about the tag application. And so Lisa, feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Jessica. So I'm Lisa Overstreet. I'm with UC Davis. And so now I'm going to talk to you about the actual process of submitting your tag application. And what's great is that it's through your UC TAP account. So all you need to do is log back into your TAP account to submit the tag application. It's really important though that before you submit it, you're checking over everything, You're making sure that all of your information is up to date and accurate. You've entered in all of your grades, all of your in-progress coursework, all of your planned coursework. So look everything over first to make sure that it's all complete and accurate before you submit. But then when you log in, you can see here on the right-hand side that there's an apply for a transfer admission guarantee that you can click on. So that's the next step. You would just log in and click there. Next slide, please. So after you click that, we're going to ask for your current California community college, the term that you're planning to apply for, and then also the specific campus that you plan to tag to. Next slide, please. After that, you will choose your major. And then you'll see that there's this campus tag checklist. It's really important that you read through this information and that you understand it, because this is going to lay out for you the specific requirements that you need to meet for the campus and major that you've selected for your tag. I know that a lot of us, it's easy to just kind of read through it and go, blah, blah, lots of information, okay, submit. But don't do that. Really read through it, make sure that you understand it and that you're meeting the criteria. And if you're not sure, this is where your counselor at your community college and those of us at the UC admissions offices are here to help to make sure that you understand the criteria and that you're ready to meet that criteria. And then you'll just scroll to the bottom and click to submit. Next slide, please. So after you submit your tag application, you're not done yet. There are still multiple steps that you need to take to complete the process. Next slide. So there are several campuses that do a oops, can we go back? Thank you. So there are several campuses that do a pre-evaluation of your coursework. So Davis and Merced do what we refer to as a pre-evaluation. So what this means is that after you submit your tag application, these campuses review your application and make a determination as to whether or not your tag is approved. And then they'll notify you of that along with some other feedback. So for these campuses, it's really important that you wait to get that information from them before you submit your UC application, because there might be some important feedback and information that you'll need to include on your UC application. For Santa Barbara, Irvine, Riverside, and Santa Cruz, they don't do a pre-evaluation of the tag. So for these campuses, you don't need to wait to get that feedback from them to submit. You can just go ahead and submit your application anytime during the November filing period that works for you. So for Davis and Merced, you're actually going to hear from them twice. You'll hear from them in November as to whether or not your tag is approved. And then after you submit your UC application, they're going to check everything, make sure that it's all conducive to what you put in the tag and you're still meeting your requirements, and then you'll get a final admissions decision from them. And then for Santa Barbara, Irvine, Riverside, and Santa Cruz, you'll receive one admissions decision after they've had a chance to review your UC application. Next slide. So it's really important that you know that regardless of the tag campus that you apply to, even if they approve your tag, you still need to submit a UC application as part of the process. You have to submit a UC application to the campus that you tag to, and you need to submit it under the same major. So if you change your major, then your tag is not going to be valid anymore. If you don't submit your UC application to that campus, then your tag is not valid. So really important that you follow the same campus and major to submit your UC application to. But you can still apply to as many UC campuses as you like through the general admission process. So having a tag doesn't preclude you from submitting your application elsewhere, but you do need to submit your UC application to your tag campus under the same major. Next slide. So why tag? Well, it's really nice because it just is a weight lifted off your shoulders. You'll know that if you submit your tag, you meet all of the criteria, you follow through with all of the steps, that you are guaranteed a place at that campus. And that's just a great thing to know. It's not a binding contract on your end. So, you know, if you submit a tag to one campus, but you get admitted somewhere else and you decide that that's where you want to go, you can totally do that. So it's an obligation we have to you, but it's not one that you have to us. And what's also great is that it's free. There is no fee to apply for tags. So really there's no reason not to do it. It's just a benefit for you. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Emily from UC Santa Cruz.
Thanks, Lisa. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and I am an admissions representative with UC Santa Cruz. So next, what we're going to do is go over some very important dates and deadlines if you are interested in submitting a tag application. So the first thing you need to do is create that TAP application. You can do that at any point during the year. So if you haven't done that already, right after this, if you want to log on, you can go ahead and get that started. And then if you plan to transfer for fall 2022, you will actually submit your tag application during the month of September. So for all of our tag campuses, we have the same deadline. You can actually go into your account and submit it. And then additionally, you will need to submit your UC application during the month of November, anytime again during the month of November, the 1st or the 30th, it doesn't matter. You just need to make sure you get it in. And also remembering that you need to submit an application to the campus you tagged with, as well as any other UC campuses you plan to apply to. And then the transfer academic update happens in January. So once you complete your fall 2021 courses and you have your grades back, you will need to go back into your UC application and update the fall courses from in progress to the grades that you earned, and then certify that your spring schedule is the same or change it if your courses might have changed. And then decisions are usually, they come out mid-March through the end of April. So that is when you can expect to hear if you have been admitted to the UC campuses and if your tag was approved for those campuses that don't pre-evaluate. Next slide, please. And then this is a very similar timeline, but for students that might be interested in submitting a tag application for spring or winter. So if you're interested, maybe you're not quite ready to transfer for the fall, but you're thinking you might be ready for the spring or winter term, this might be an option for you. There are only 2 campuses that are open for a tag for winter, which are Riverside and Merced, but other campuses may be open for general admission. I know UC Santa Cruz is typically open for winter as well. So you can see this is a very similar timeline, just making sure that you are meeting these dates and deadlines so that you are able to get that application submitted. Next slide, please. All right, and then getting into some frequently asked questions. So I saw a lot of these in the chat already, but we just want to make sure that we can reiterate these and make sure that you know if you are eligible for tag. So what happens if a student doesn't have 30 semester units or 45 quarter units completed by the time that they submit their tag? Well, a student is unfortunately not eligible for tag at that point, but they would still be eligible to submit a UC application. So just because you're not meeting the tag requirements doesn't mean that you aren't meeting the general UC requirements. So it'd be really important that you submit a general application instead of submitting that tag. What happens if you submit your tag application and then you decide you want to change your major? Changing your major can affect your tag decision. So if you want to make sure that if you maybe accidentally put the wrong major or you need to change your major, that you contact the campus that you submitted a tag to. It could void your tag application. So you want to be careful and be sure when you submit your tag that that is the major that you want to study. The next question is, what happens if you make a change? So sometimes there are instances where you plan to take a course in the spring, you listed it on your tag, but then you had to change your schedule because maybe the course isn't offered or you wanted to take something else. That is another instance where that could affect your tag. So again, you'd want to reach out to the campus that you tagged with, reach out to their admissions and see what they suggest, but it could affect your tag ultimately. And then you can enroll in courses during intersession or winter. They will not be used towards the tag GPA, but those units will be used towards the 60 transferable units. And then if you are a student that has UC transferable units, or if you have units from another 4-year, that's okay. You should definitely list them in your tag application, but you want to make sure that you have at least 30 units from a California community college so that you are eligible to apply with the tag program. Next slide, please. And this is a really important slide. So if you all want to take a screenshot or a picture of this, this has some really helpful resources for all of you. If you have not created a TAP account already, you can go to the UC TAP website. We also have our tag matrix, which is basically shows all of the tag requirements for each of the 6 campuses, their GPA, if there's any majors that are excluded. So that's a good way to get a snapshot to see which campus you might be interested in tagging with. And then of course, the contact information for our campuses. So you can see the tag by campus, who to contact, the different admissions requirements, and then also check out our YouTube channel where you can learn more about the transfer initiatives and see videos like the one we are hosting today. Next slide, please. And this is another important, if you basically the link from the previous slide, if you want to take a picture of this, this would be the tag requirements by campus. So you can go onto our websites, you can go directly to our tag page, see what the requirements are, as well as get information about who to contact if you're interested in one of our particular campuses. Next slide, please. And a little bit more contact information. So you can see our emails here, who to contact per campus. And again, the admissions website. Admissions websites are a great way to learn more about our campuses. We have virtual tours, we have drop-in advising, there's pre-recorded videos, lots of good information for you to learn more about each of our campuses. And that wraps up our presentation. So thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that this was very helpful and informative as you think about submitting your UC tag application. And I am going to hand it off to Pam, who I think is going to have a Q&A session.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Mariah, Melissa, Jessica, Lisa, and Emily, of course, for that lovely presentation. We have a lot of questions, a lot of great questions coming into the Q&A. It's kind of difficult to keep up, but we will answer some of those frequently asked questions that you have submitted. So we'll start with, let's see, with Jessica. And anybody else can chime in too. If you tag to a certain school, do you have to go there or can you go to another school that you get into?
Great question. And the answer is no, you are not locked in. If you tag to a campus and ultimately you decide to choose another UC campus or even another campus in general, you are more than welcome to go to that campus. Tag doesn't lock you in. So again, it's one of those, it's a great opportunity to know that you're going to get admitted somewhere as long as you're meeting the requirements. But it still gives you a lot of flexibility if there's other campuses you're still interested in.
All right, so I'm gonna throw this message and this question over to Melissa. Is there a unit cap for transferring?
I love this question. So Pam, I'm not going to be able to answer this in like 2 minutes. So hopefully you're patient with my answer. I'll try to answer this because I saw a ton of these questions in the chat, all kind of concerned about having too many units and what if I have these types of units? There is a transfer credit maximum limitation policy at the University of California that basically states that we will award up to 70 semesters of lower division credit toward your degree, which then is what we use when we evaluate your application for admission. We're looking for at least 60 semester units for eligibility. And then we just keep in mind how many units you have done above that. But really what it comes down to is, will you ever have too many units and being at risk of senior standing? So there's a couple of things here that I want to mention. One, there are only a certain number of units that would ever put you at risk of being senior standing. And those are UC units, all UC units, both lower division and upper division, and upper division units from a 4-year university. Okay. So those are the units that would potentially put you at risk of being senior standing. How many can get really tricky. So we always want you to contact us directly so we can work with you to make sure we understand those numbers. But there's also a question I saw about being a high unit junior. Would you ever be considered a high unit junior? Each UC campus defines a high unit junior and will or may not admit high unit juniors. It really just depends campus by campus. Okay. So that definition of a high unit junior depends. If you have taken 200 units at your community college, I think Jessica mentioned this before, and you've only ever earned units at your community college, you will never be at risk of being senior standing because all of your units are likely lower division. Okay. So don't ever be worried about having too many units. In fact, when you submit your UC application in November, when it asks you how many units will you complete before you transfer, just always put that you're going to be a junior level transfer, because if you put that you're going to be a senior transfer, it gets tricky. You really would only ever be a senior again if you have too many UC units or 4-year university units. Sorry, Pam, I told you I was going to take forever to answer that. It's a really complicated rule. So if you do find yourself in a really complex situation where you're concerned, contact one of us because we're more than happy to help you figure that out.
Actually, that's a great time to maybe scroll back to that previous slide with the contact information. And I know there are some very specific questions in the Q&A for UC Irvine. Unfortunately, our colleagues from UC Irvine were unable to join us today, but please contact them. There's also a lot of information, great information, very specific information on their TAG website. So please visit their website as well to try to look for the answers to your questions specifically for UCI. All right, thank you. Yeah, that was, I knew that was gonna be a long answer because that is a very complex issue, and it is gonna be different for every student. I think for most of the students, if your all of your work is coming from community college, you don't have to worry about hitting a cap or a ceiling. So, don't worry about that. Okay, another really common question that we get is, and this happens to a lot of students. So, they fill out their tag and they submit their tag in September. They fill out their application and submit that in November. with their planned courses for, you know, winter and spring, what if those courses change? Will that affect their tag? And how do they let us know of these changes? I think we mentioned that in the presentation, but you know, it comes up.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if there are any changes to winter or spring courses, you'll want to make sure that you update that within the, if you've already submitted your UC application, then you'll want to update that with the transfer academic update that's scheduled after submitting the UC application. Prior to submitting your UC application, you'll want to update those changes in the UC application. Now, whether or not it will affect your tag will depend on the major preparation courses that are required for your major. And so you will want to reach out to the individual UC campus that you tagged to ensure that your admissions will not be affected. And if I missed anything, feel free to add.
All right, thank you, Mariah. Another really common question that we get is, what if I spend more than 2 years at a community college? Will that affect my tag? Can I still qualify for a tag or for UC admission? I'll pass that on to Lisa.
I apologize, Pam. I was distracted answering a question in the Q&A. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, we have some students who take longer than 2 years to complete their admission requirements or tag requirements. Will that affect their tag? Can they still tag? Can they still be considered for admission to UC?
Definitely, that's not a problem. It's not uncommon for students to take longer than 2 years to complete their coursework. So that's not a problem for us. You can still tag, you can still apply. We may have rules about you needing to be enrolled during certain terms for tag specifically prior to admission. And those rules are gonna depend a little bit based on campus. But yes, definitely, it's not a problem in general if you take longer than 2 years.
All right, thank you, Lisa. And the next question is for Emily. Do I have to list the major on my tag on the UC application?
Great question. Yes, as a transfer student, you do need to have a major that you plan to apply to. You will list that major on your TAP application when you submit it, and you will also list the major within the UC application. You do want to make sure for the school that you are tagging to that the major matches on your UC tag application and the UC regular UC application. But if you want to apply to other campuses with a different major, that is okay. You just want to make sure you are meeting any requirements, major prep that they require.
All right, and would you say that they also need to have the same email address on their UC tab as in their UC application?
Yes, it is definitely recommended. If you use the same email, you can import all of the information from TAP into your from your TAP into the UC application, so you don't have to re-enter all of those courses. So it really helps us out, and it also helps you out because it's less work that you have to do.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Let's see. I'm not sure who wants to take this question. And I know that it was mentioned earlier as well, but which campuses have a tag available for winter or spring?
I can jump in and answer for Riverside. So Riverside is one of the campuses that is open for tag for winter. Year to year, there may be some closed majors, so it will vary. So just kind of keep an eye out in the spring in terms of when we release what those closed majors would be, if any. But Riverside is definitely one of them.
UC Merced is also open for spring transfer applicants, also for tag applicants, and we are open to all majors.
All right, thank you, Jessica and Mariah. Okay, so computer science is a very, very popular major these days. Which campus has a tag, and which campuses have computer science as a major for UC application, for the regular UC application? Let's start with Melissa. You're the first one in my screen.
Yeah, great question. So computer science is an amazing program. At UCSB, the computer science program is housed in the College of Engineering. And unfortunately, due to its very small size, it is not part of the transfer admission guarantee program. But I know some of the other UC campuses do have computer science available with tags. So I'm going to pass it off to Jessica since she's also next to my face right here.
Thanks, Melissa. Luckily, UCR is a campus that offers computer science. We offer a couple other computer science related majors like computer engineering. For fall, that major will be open for tag. Actually, this past winter, it was closed. So again, like I mentioned, winter can change. But it is still a very competitive major. That major does require a 3.6 minimum GPA for tag, and it jumped up quite a bit from last year to this year. But if that is a major you're interested in, you can tag to computer science. And I will hand it off to Mariah.
I think your audio is not working at the moment.
There we go. Thank you. I was saying thank you, Jessica. UC Merced is open to computer science and engineering majors for both fall and spring semester, as well as tag applicants and regular applicants.
Lisa?
UC Davis is not open for computer science for tag, but we do have computer science available for students to apply to through the general admission process. We have another major that's computer engineering and computer science. The requirements are different and it is a different major, but that one is available for tag. So that might be something that students could look into as well.
And Emily?
Santa Cruz no longer offers a tag in computer science, but all of our other majors are still open for tag. So maybe computer engineering or computer science game design, but you can also apply through the general application for computer science.
So definitely, you know, if you're really interested in computer science, you know, be open to consider other majors that are related to computer science. You know, as my colleagues have mentioned, there's also computer engineering, which focuses mostly on hardware. Some campuses have computer science and engineering, which focuses on both the software side and the hardware side. There are some campuses that have majors such as data science or statistics. You know, at UC Davis, we even have a major called cognitive science that have a computational emphasis. You might also want to look at the math majors at the UCs to see if there are some math majors that have a computational emphasis. Okay, we have a lot of students who are worried about EWs on their transcript because this past year, due to COVID, a lot of students had to withdraw from classes and community colleges were giving EWs for those courses. Can you tell us how that may affect their application? Oh, I will ask Jessica to answer that, please.
Sure. So for UC Riverside, EWs don't, or even Ws in general, don't affect the student's application. Essentially, we the units and the units aren't calculated. It's kind of like, you drop the course with a W. So it's not counted against you. Now, if it's a required course that you needed for admission, you do want to make sure you retake that class. But EWs, Ws themselves, at least for Riverside, don't affect a student's eligibility.
Okay, thank you. Another common question that we get, especially this past year, we had some students who decided to not transfer for fall 2021 and stay at their community college. What if they had a tag last year for fall 2021? Can they tag again this coming fall 2022? I'll give that question to Melissa. Sorry, I'm throwing you the hard questions. Huh?
No, it's totally fine. Yes, you can have a tag. So if you applied last year for whatever reason, decided to stay or, work or whatever the situation was for you, the tag, you're able to tag to a UC campus per term. So let's say you even tagged to UC Riverside to transfer tag of winter 2022. What year are we in right now? That's okay, because you could still tag to a different UC campus for fall of 2022 because they are different years, okay? It gets tricky, of course. I'm not encouraging you to do that if it's not in your plans, right? Sometimes life throws us things that, make us have to change our plans, but you are able to submit a tag to a different term if you end up not transferring.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Lisa, is there a fee to apply for a tag? And do I have to write my personal insight question responses as part of the tag?
So there is no fee for tag. Tag is free. You don't have personal insight questions in the tag application itself, but as part of tag, you do need to submit a UC application, and in the UC application, there are the personal insight questions, which you will still need to fill out. Now, if you end up qualifying for tag, technically for admission, we're just looking at your academic information, but it's still really important to be thoughtful about those personal insight questions because campus scholarships use those as well. And then if you're planning to apply to other campuses, in addition to the campus that you're tagging for, they may be using those for admission. So it is still a part of the process, but not specifically in the tag application.
So Mariah, thank you, Lisa. So Mariah, even if I have an approved tag, you mean to say I still have to fill out and submit the UC application?
Absolutely, you have to fill out a UC application. Otherwise, your tag application and your tag status will be invalid.
Okay, thank you, Mariah. We talked about selective majors earlier. And we talked about having specific courses and specific GPAs for selective majors. So Emily, for selective majors, what GPAs do you look for or look at in the application?
That is a great question. So most campuses, I will say, look at 2 GPAs. So we look at your overall UC GPA. So that's all UC transferable coursework. And that is the GPA that is used for tag, the one that's posted that says you need to have a 3.0, 3.2 for the different respective campuses. And then you also have a major prep GPA. So this GPA is going to be the specific courses that are required for the major that you are interested in studying. So say you are a student that wants to go to UC Santa Cruz and you want to study psychology. There are 3 courses that you have to complete and you have to earn a certain GPA in each of those courses or a certain letter grade. And so we are looking at both when we admit students.
All right, thank you. Let's see, what other questions do we have in here? I think another common question that we usually get, from students as well as counselors is if they're not a full-time student, will they be, can they still be considered for a tag or for admission? Should we do a round robin for this one again? Or maybe not. Jessica, do you want to take this question?
Sure, and I was actually trying to answer a question too, so if you don't mind repeating it. I can't multitask.
No, that's okay. No worries. So if a student is not a full-time student this last year, will they still be considered for a tag or for general UC admission?
Okay, so for UC Riverside, we will still consider a student even if they are not enrolled full-time. This can vary campus to campus. I believe there are some campuses that do have a unit requirement or enrollment requirement, full-time versus part-time. So depending on the tag campus you're interested in, you want to either reach out to them directly or look at the tag matrix. But speaking for UC Riverside, if you're enrolled in one class, or even if you don't need to enroll in anything in spring, if you're meeting our tag requirements, we'll still consider you for tag and for admission.
Okay. Does anybody else want to chime in or add anything?
I will say, kind of answering it for part-time or taking a quarter or a term off, a semester off. We see this a lot. Sometimes students may finish their requirements during the fall and then end up not taking any classes in the winter and or spring. And again, if it's a tag requirement by campus, you want to be really careful. At Santa Barbara, it's not part of any of our tag requirements. But we would want to know what you're doing with that time. If you're taking a gap. So part-time work, even if you're enrolled in a few classes here and there, give us context. Why is that the case, right? Because it's about your academic journey in light of your circumstances, your challenges, what you've gone through. It's really important for you to share this information with us because we only know if you tell us. So the more info we know, the better it is, and it's helpful in the review process.
Great point, Melissa. Thank you. In the tag application, there is a comment section that where you can explain anything really. Like if you feel strongly about explaining the W's or EW's that you have in your record, then use the comment section. And as Melissa said, if you're not a full-time student or if you're taking a gap semester, a gap year for whatever reason, then that's where you can briefly explain your personal circumstances. For UC Davis, I think this is a question we get a lot. For Davis tag, it's not required to be full-time in your last 2 semesters before you transfer. It is recommended. And if you're not a full-time student, use that additional comment section in the tag application to explain why you're not full-time. Maybe you've already completed, most of your requirements in previous years, and you're just taking the remaining classes that you need for your major. Or maybe you're working full-time, and only taking, part-time classes at your community college. That's perfectly fine, but we just need you to let us know. There is a really interesting question in the Q&A. Let's see, and I'm not sure who wants to tackle this one. The question is, what's the difference between the tag and the UC pathways?
I can start. So there are a lot of resources, a lot of programs. It can sometimes be overwhelming with so much information and resources that are available for you. And that's just considering UC transfer. Some of you may be even considering CSUs, private schools, out-of-state schools. It's a lot. So let's try to break it down. The UC transfer pathways were a set of uniform major preparation for UC's most sought after majors. Think of it this way. If you were a student and you were interested in one of those sought after majors, so like there's 20 of them right now, like communication, anthropology, biology, mechanical engineering, and you didn't know which UC you wanted to transfer to, but you knew the major you wanted, right? One of those 20, that would help you prepare for the major system-wide because it's a uniform list of major preparation courses for majors in that pathway. The pathway is always set at the highest level of selection, so no UC campus can ask for more, but some UC campuses can ask for less. The only thing that is not included in the transfer pathways is GPA, because some UCs might say, sure, here's the transfer pathway for mechanical engineering, but the GPA range that we're all going to be looking for is going to vary. So that's just something to consider for transfer pathways. So that's transfer pathways, uniform major preparation for UC's most sought after majors. The transfer admission guarantee is it's a program that it basically is a partnership. It's an agreement between you and your UC, your tag campus, in a particular major. Okay, so here you would have to make sure that, you know, I am Melissa and I am going to tag to UC Riverside, and I'm going to be a psychology major at UC Riverside, and that's my tag major. Okay, so that means that my agreement is to apply for tag at UCR and meet all of the requirements. And if UC Riverside says, hey, psychology major, you need to take these courses, I need to make sure I complete those requirements because it's part of my tag, right? So that's the tag. It's an agreement between the student, the UC in their major. Yes, is that good? Anyone want to add anything?
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, I think that really helps to clarify the difference between, you know, what a transfer pathway is for UCs as well as a transfer admission guarantee. Okay, I'm going to ask Emily. This is a question I see a lot on the Q&A. If I meet the tag criteria, is it truly a guarantee?
It really is. So as long as you meet the tag requirements, and if there is major preparation requirements, and you maintain your grades through spring, it is a guaranteed admission. So you do your part and we hold up our part of the bargain as well.
Yes, you'll have conditions of admission as soon as you receive your admissions notification between March and April. So as long as you're, complying with those conditions of admission, then it truly is a guarantee. For Davis and Merced, since you're the two campuses that notify students in November, by mid-November, do you want students to wait until they hear back about their tag before submitting their UC application?
So yes, we do want students to wait until they hear back after submitting a tag before they submit their UC application, because we provide detailed feedback when we let you know our tag decision. And so it's important to get that information so that if there's anything additional that you need to put into your UC application, that you are ready to do that and move forward. So we do want you to wait.
I absolutely agree with Lisa. We do encourage you to wait just in case we can provide you any additional feedback. We do still encourage you to submit your UC application. Again, because if you are not approved through the tag application, you can still be admitted through the regular application.
Okay, great. We have a request to explain how we regard W's or EW's in the tag or in the UC application. I'm not sure. Jessica, do you want to take this question?
I answered it earlier, but I think I'll hand it off to Melissa to, in case other campuses want to talk about how they regard those EW and W quizzes.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this one is a really great question. And I'm glad whoever it was, anonymous friend, brought it up again. Sorry, my dog is like, hey, Melissa, it's time to go outside and walk. What are you doing? Sorry. The W's and EW's in general at UCSB, they're fairly neutral in the admission process because we, understand that things can happen, especially during those COVID terms, right? There were a lot of things that were beyond our control and just a lot of things happening. So in general, W's and EW's are neutral. However, a WF would be usually not be great because typically that is calculated into your GPA as a F, as a failing grade. So I don't know if many of the colleges still have that as an option, but just wanted to throw it out there. I would encourage all students that do have W's, and if they're concerned about them, just give us some context, explain what was happening. Was it COVID related? Was it, there was a situation in your family that you had to take care of? Are you a parent? Were you housing unstable at that time? Give us context because it's really important for us to know that. Again, it's the whole story, but in general, W's and EW's are neutral.
Yes, I think all the campuses will agree to that, Melissa. Thank you. Maybe we can go back to the timeline slide because there's a question about submitting the tag and the UC application. So just to remind everyone again that the tag application is, there we go. The tag application is next month for fall 2022. The tag submission is during the month of September, and then the UC application is during the month of November. However, you can start your UC application right now. It opened August 1st. There is a question about whether it matters if you submit the tag early or the UC application early. Mariah, do you want to take this question, please?
So if you want to, so most of the campuses actually evaluate the applications on a rolling basis. And so when it comes to for the regular application, but when it comes to the tag application, we don't start evaluating until after the end of the submission date. So it doesn't matter when you submit the tag application, just make sure you submit it by that deadline. And if I hope all the other UC campuses agree.
All right, thank you, Mariah. A question again for Merced and Davis about what that feedback or that decision will look like in mid-November. Can you give us kind of a sneak peek of what that tag decision might look like? What information will be included in that tag decision when students receive it?
So for UC Merced, if you go onto your UC TAP account in that colorful box that I mentioned earlier, you will see if your tag status has been approved or denied. And if it has been approved, then it will come with some conditions that you'll have to uphold. For example, maintaining the courses that you said that you will complete in your tag application, as well as completing those courses with the grades that are necessary. Sometimes grades will need to be higher for example, some computer science classes will require, for example, a B. So if that's the case for those grades, you want to maintain those. But for the most part, you want to maintain your grades of a C grade or better, and just make sure that you uphold all of the requirements that you set in your tag application. If for some reason you happen to need to change your courses, then you want to reach out to the UC representatives, the admissions departments, and verify that your tag will not be affected.
And Pam, please jump in if I have anything wrong or if I'm missing anything. But my understanding is it's pretty much the same for UC Davis, and that if your tag is approved, we'll let you know, along with the conditions that you need to continue to uphold for your tag to remain approved and your admission to go through. But then if it is not approved, I believe that we do provide you information as to why it's not. And that way you can, make those changes. So let's say you're missing a class that you needed for spring. So we couldn't, approve your tag, but we'll let you know, hey, you're missing this class. Then you can add it and apply for general admission and have that in your application so that you are in a better place to apply for the general admission process. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, it's pretty much like a contract. It will show you exactly what you need to complete and maintain, to maintain that guaranteed admission. I also want to give, I know we're almost at time, but I do want to give our colleagues from the UCs that do not notify in advance, what you all need to be aware of and, keep an eye out for. And we'll start with Melissa.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. I really just want to emphasize that if you end up tagging to UCSB, it's really, really important that you understand the checklist, right? All of the different things that you have to agree to make sure that your tag remains valid. But because we don't pre-evaluate or provide an early decision, we don't do that. I'll give you a reason why. Because we have certain requirements that have to be completed at the end of fall. So because UCSB needs a 3.4 at the end of fall, in September, when you submit your tag application, you could have that 3.4. I need to make sure you maintain it through the fall. You could have a 3.3 when you submit your tag application, but as long as you have a 3.4 at the end of fall, I'm going to honor your tag, right? As long as you meet all the requirements. So that's why myself and some of the other campuses, we don't have that early review or early decision because there are certain things that we need to see completed before we can even look at your application. So because of that, we rely on your tag application submitted in September, your UC application submitted in November, and the transfer academic update that you should submit by the priority deadline in January.
Jessica, do you want to add anything else?
Melissa covered it.
Emily? Okay, great. So we are almost at time. I just want to thank all of my colleagues for participating and presenting and answering your chat questions. I know there are a lot of questions that are left unanswered. Please feel free to contact our campuses to get your questions answered if we didn't have enough time. You all had fabulous questions, very prepared, very specific, meticulous questions. Really, really impressed with you all. It means that you are prepared, for this transfer admission process. So with that, again, thank you all for joining us. Have a fabulous fall semester and rest of academic year. And good luck with your UC application. Take care. Stay safe.